So what would you say are some really common mistakes that you see people make like,
Bow riding.
oh
Bow
yeah.
riding is something it's almost exhilarating, and I could see why people do it because if you're new on the water, you're at the front, you get the waves, you look down, it's like to see the water
hmm
underneath the boat. But the danger in it is so astronomical, and now I'm terrified.
For people to kind of avoid some of the easier tips like, bow riding or panic and throttle, that kind of thing.
I would say first things first, almost treat it as if you're heading out, like from the start of when you're heading out on the water, make sure that you have somebody or an emergency contact number.
hmm
And then to add on that, like I
Yeah.
a function.
Welcome to the Boaters Podcast. Today we're going to be hanging out with Alexandra, who's well known online for giving out all kinds of boating tips on safety and stuff like that. She knows quite a bit about pontoons and tritoons and about some wakeboarding too, or wake surfing. So today we're going to be talking about safety tips, boating, best practices, and then a little bit of pontoons, tritoons, and some wake surfing. But just so everybody can get to know you a little bit better, Alexandra, do you have any good stories of being on the water and seeing some mistakes or dangerous, crazy situations that might be safety related that might let us get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, so hi. Everything that I have learned on the lake has been from something negative happening. So unfortunately, like it's kind of those situations where you live and you learn.
hmm
So and I feel like that's just what becoming a captain is, unless you're taking like active lessons to drive a boat. You really don't know how to understand the water until you're out there.
hmm
So yeah, I kind of have like a live and learn over the last couple years, and I'm hoping to take the experiences that I've lived through and learned from and put them out on social media to try to help people avoid mistakes like I've made. And mistakes are inevitable. So yeah, like one time, it was even just like 2 seasons ago, I took out my pontoon with my girlfriend, and it was like one of the first times that I took it out with without like my brother or my husband or like one of my guy friends. So it was just me and the girls. And
Right.
we took out like our two dogs, and it was just like a series of unfortunate events. So the one
That's how
dog,
boating is.
yeah, yeah. It just like kept going too. So the one dog like fell in the lake, and usually that's okay, but she's like one of the ones that are skittish in the water. So she went
Oh
full panic
no.
mode, and I jumped in the water to kind of go after her,
Right.
obviously. And my girlfriend jumped in the water too. So now boat is
Oh
unmanned.
no.
Yeah,
Oh,
so now we
and
have
no one's on the boat. Oh
so
no.
now we have unmanned boat, and so our lake fluctuates a lot with depth level. So it was one of the times of the year when the lake was super shallow. And so when you have like low water, your docks are really high. So we're like thankfully right by a dock, and in a normal situation we'd be able to like reach up and hold on, but
hmm
we were so low so we couldn't reach the dock. So now we're with the dog that's panicking, who's bigger than both of us three didn't snag a life jacket, like dog included wasn't wearing a life jacket, which is one of the things that I'm going to recommend. Dogs should wear life jackets too.
Yep.
So we're both in the water, and we're rotating back and forth holding the dog up out of the water. So dog's on me, I'm treading water, and then I'm like, okay, I can't tread anymore. Give her to the friend. And it's like back and forth for what felt like forever. And we're like, what are we gonna do? Like, how are
What
we
happened to the
gonna
boat? Wait,
so,
wait.
so the boat's like floating right next to us.
Oh,
Thankfully.
I was like, oh no, like what? Like, wait a minute.
So boat was off. It wasn't a windy day, so we're like within proximity of the boat. Thankfully, one of our friends was driving by, and he's like one of those guys that you just like can rely on fully. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna say like it's so important to have somebody within, like when you're heading out on the boat, make sure that you have a friend either on the water or like a contact, an emergency contact in case something happens. You always have somebody that can come to you if your boat breaks down. So he's one of
Yeah.
those friends. Yeah, he'll always be there. And he saw us and we saw him, and I swear, like it was like that. He was next to us in the water. He was able to get the dog, pull her on the boat, and
Wow.
yeah, we all were fine at that point. But the story continues. So,
Okay.
so like adrenaline like dissipates, like we saved the dog, we're floating back on the pontoon, cruising back, like thankful that like we made it, and I'm probably like 20 feet out of my dock and the boat runs out of gas. So we
Of
had to
course.
call the friend that saved us the first time and give us a
Like, hey, you
tow.
still out on the water? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So like these things happen out there and like you don't like you'll live through it and then you learn from it. So thankfully it was one of those situations where like everyone was fine and it wasn't anything life like threatening.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, because on the lake it is a little bit less, and then like you said, next to the dock and whatnot. But like, if you were on like a bigger lake or like in a bay or something, and there's current, like both people jumping in the water, like, oh
The
man,
boat's
and no
gone.
life jackets, and like, yeah, it could have turned bad. It's funny, your friend. It's kind of like you're lucky that he's the nice guy, because most of us we'd like pull up and be like, what's going on here? Like, what you
Yeah,
guys
like who are these
doing?
new
Like,
guys?
what happened? Like,
Yeah.
poke at you a little bit, but that's too funny. That is too funny. What got you into boating?
So I've lived on the lake my whole life. And in New Jersey, you can get your boating license quite early. So, I mean, I wasn't even driving a car at that point, and my mom took like me and my brothers and my sister to the like boating safety course where you get your boating license at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, once we had it, we've just kind of been driving the boats around the lake for a while. And
Right.
I'm up here in New Jersey, so it was like I would say that in my younger years, it was a very like private lake, and then COVID
Mm.
happened, and we're about an hour outside of New York City, and everybody swarmed to the lake. And it became overwhelming so fast. Like there was no laws against boat rentals. So we were seeing a lot of out-of-towners just doing
Mm-hmm.
daily rentals. And I was just like, we need to get some like public service announcements out to the people on the lake to
Yeah.
really increase like safety. So I was actually working with the local Marine police and the state police here for like to try to come up with just even like pamphlets that we could give out of towners like quick little boating safety stuff and enforcing like getting your like no more of those like day licenses. Like, have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
The day passes?
Not really. So, because it's totally different in Florida. Like as long as you have a driver's license, you can. I know there's an like if you're younger, like let's say you're 14 or something. I know there are things that you have to do, like you have to take a boater safety course. I mean, I think you have to do that now unless you have a driver's license. But once you do that, like like you're good. There is no
There's like day
there is no
passes
day pass
here.
or anything.
Yeah, like you
Really.
can you like go to the marina and you like sign a form and you have like a boating license for a day. And that was a big problem on our lake.
You would think if there was there needed to be some kind of safety, because that's one thing I was going to get into about, like, some of the dangerous things that people see, like, for the mistakes that people make first off. But like, even down here we see that a lot, where people come on vacation, they rent a boat for a week and they've never driven a boat before in their life. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like same thing, like these people come from the city, and like, it's cold up there for a lot of times, so you guys have a shorter season, like, a 4 month season or whatever. So it's kind of like these are probably a lot of people that don't know anything about boating. They've never driven a boat, nothing, and now all of a sudden here they are, just free reign, handle down, just cruising down the lake, like.
Yeah, like have never seen a no wake buoy in their life, so they're just like flying through the bridge and we're like, "What
Mm,
the?" And
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what? There's nothing against people trying to boat. I like strongly encourage people to discover
yeah,
boating. Um, but there's got to be like some stronger enforcement of like a background safety cert in all of the
yeah.
states.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you 100%. I think that kind of like what you're doing, it's almost like, you're talking about working with the marina and having a like a safety pamphlet or something. With today, you could make that pamphlet, and like, as a content creator, like, we could make videos and have these safety things, have a QR code on the pamphlet and be like, boom, scan this, check this out, and have like, a 15-20 minute video that kind of goes over the real basic like things of like the no
That's a
wake
good
zone
idea,
and
like a
stuff like
scanned
that.
QR
It
code.
yeah, because it is 100% all day. I'm with you on like letting people um
Discover
get into
boating.
boating,
Yeah.
discover boating 100%. But it is also very dangerous because when you get people in the water and then people doing 45, it's kind of like down here we have usually a couple deaths a year from exactly that, where
Yeah.
we've got divers, so people diving a rental boat don't know that much about boating and they leave it in gear. Like you said, the dog jumps in the water, they all jump in the water, the boat's
We
in gear, and
panic.
next thing you know, we got a
Yeah.
problem. Like it's a real situation.
Yeah, and we actually had it's so sad to even think of, but we've had the same situation where there's a number of fatalities on the water just from like panic moments like that. And
Yeah. Yep.
so a lot of what I teach is like when you're driving the boat, the calmer that you could be, the better, because your throttle
Hmm.
almost reflects that. Like if you're panicking and you
Yep.
pop it into gear, the best case scenario is neutral.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with hitting a dock in neutral. Like it's better than being in gear and then the back end flies around, and then if you're
Hmm.
driving an outboard that smacks against the dock, you're bending props.
Yeah.
Neutral
Yeah.
is your friend.
Yeah. Panic and throttle is like the number one docking um, go to for people when you first get on the boat. It's just, bam,
Yeah,
like
that's what you
the
see
next
in
thing
all
you
the
know.
videos.
Yeah. So what would you say are some really common mistakes that you see people make, like, starting out, like just that they might not even think is that big of a mistake, but it could turn into a dangerous situation?
Oh man, that's easy. Bow riding.
Oh
Bow
yeah.
riding is something, it's almost exhilarating, and I could see why people do it because if you're new on the water, you're at the front, you get the waves, you look down, it's like to see the water
Hmm.
underneath the boat. I remember being young and like doing that and thinking like this is like I loved it. I loved it.
Hmm.
But the danger in it is so astronomical, and now I'm terrified. Like when
Yeah.
I see people bow riding, I'm like, wait. Like
Like
that's
start
scary
driving
stuff.
after them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
don't realize it because it's the whole like new boat or on the water bliss. Like there's such a beauty in getting out on the water, but you have to be aware of bow riding as such a severe potential danger.
Yeah, yeah. There is something about that tranquil view of the water coming off the bow that like
Very
just
Titanic.
draws. Yeah, yeah. It's like pulling on strings. It's like why do you
Yeah.
pull your string of your stuff to take it apart? It's like you can't help to do it. Like
So
it's
that's like the
crazy.
biggest thing, I would say that I see so often, and it's such an easy fix. If there was
Yeah.
a little bit more education on it before something like a fatality were to occur due to.
Yep. So whenever you put your QR code on your pamphlet, make sure that goes in the
No bow riding.
no about writing. Okay. On that kind of same note, what would you say would be 2 to 3 tips for people to kind of avoid some of the easier tips, like bow riding or panic, panic and throttle, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say first things first, almost treat it as if you're heading out, like from the start of when you're heading out on the water, make sure that you have somebody or an emergency contact number
Hmm.
that you can quickly access in case there's an emergency. Because say you're in a situation like I was and I ran out of gas, thankfully I had somebody right there, but on a windy day, you could easily be run up on the rocks, and having somebody that can quickly access you to avoid that would be key. So always have an emergency
Hmm.
contact. And then to add on that, an anchor, like
Yeah.
a functional anchor, because
Hmm.
you can be like, say you rent a boat on a lake and you're unfamiliar with the ground floor. Certain anchors have are more beneficial on different types of flooring. So you wouldn't know this, but like our the bottom of our lake is super rocky, and most people would think like certain anchors are no problem, but you won't get any hook. So if you're in a situation where you run out of gas and you need to like drop anchor to avoid running up on the shoreline, make sure you have one A and make sure it's the right one B. So know your waters. So sandbars, rocks. I don't think that I think it's like very dangerous that people just rent blind without knowing the lake itself, or even like the inlets at the like an ocean situation. Yeah, so you got to know your waters. Oh, and the best tip I can give is to pay attention to the wind. Like
Oh yeah.
because if you're going out on the water, it's you're not just driving a car. Like you're influenced by the wind and the currents
Mm-hmm.
significantly. Everything that you do, everywhere that you go. I mean, when I drive the pontoon boat, it's like a parachute. It's literally
Yep.
like a it's like a wall. So if once the wind's blowing, even like a 15-mile-an-hour gust, I'm moving.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you got to check the winds.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I think because down here, I'm pretty sure when you rent a boat, down here they have a preliminary checklist that they go over with the boat, and I think that is something that they have to do is go over like the anchor and that kind of stuff. But you're probably right. There needs to be more. There's got to be a better. There's got to be more information that can be provided.
Yeah, and I mean, trust me, we've gone back and forth with like our local police department and the state police that run the lake here. Um, and I almost want to like paint the picture. This lake it's a 63-mile perimeter. So I would say it's quite big.
Yeah.
It's 9 miles in length, like top to bottom. So it does take a minute to get from one side to the other. So I don't want to make it sound like, it's just like a couple people on little pontoons. Like on a weekend, on a rough weekend, you're sinking the front of a pontoon boat. Easy. Like
Really? That
the
rough?
waves, yeah, the waves get big. So when you're coming out here from like New York City and renting a boat for the day, the potential danger is there. And we're just trying to spread word to avoid catastrophes because it's very easy to come across rough water on the weekend here.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually a good thing to kind of discuss is like boating accidents too, because you don't think about that, like the rough water, the wind, even boat traffic. Because I mean, 63 miles. That is, I consider that to a pretty big lake. Like that's a decent sized lake where certain weather conditions, it's going to get sloppy out there. So what are some common like boating accidents that you see people that we can kind of give some tips on how to avoid those kinds of things, like when it's rough out, the water coming over the front of a pontoon boat, because the way a pontoon boat rides, it's not that's actually a dangerous thing that, like you said, if you don't know the waters, you might not think about that, and as far as like creating a boating accident
Yeah,
on the
if you're
water.
gonna go, yeah, if you're gonna go rent a pontoon, I would say be very selective with who you bring on board because if it is a
Mm.
pontoon, the weight distribution is extremely sensitive. So I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed on pontoon boats, even if you have like 200-pound people in the front, like two separate 100-pound people, like that's not those are small people. I mean, I'm 100 something pounds, and if I sit in the front, I notice a weight distribution issue where the
Mm-hmm.
front gets way more dippy. So if you're planning like a day with your friends to go rent a pontoon boat, be selective with how many people you bring and where they're sitting, because if you load the front of the boat where it's the most appealing, you're gonna have issues sinking the front of the boat, and it's gonna complicate your day significantly.
Yeah, you're gonna get put on a mission real quick. Like
Yeah.
that's too funny. And we see a lot of that down here
Yeah.
in South Florida. It's we're the overload capital of the world. Like what 17-foot boat. We can fit at least 12 people on there. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
You're so right.
That's so funny.
But
Do you
sinking
guys
the
see?
front of
Go ahead.
Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
sinking the front of the pontoon is so common. Like I see it on the videos when I scroll through in Florida, like you said, there's so many people are renting boats,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
pontoon boat's the go-to. So like
Oh
the
yeah, you can put
best
more people
thing,
on it.
yeah, but the best thing is put them in the back or be selective about how many people you're bringing, and that's an easy
Hmm.
fix.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have a scale on the boat that's like, nope, you're in the back. Okay, you can go the front.
Hey, they do it on airplanes.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. They do that on airplanes. That's totally that is true. What
Weight
do you guys
distribution's a
see a lot of
thing.
accidents there? Like actual like boating accidents?
I would say thankfully no, but we see a lot
Okay.
of like a lack of education that is risky. So like I'm thankful
Okay.
that there's not a lot of boating accidents, but I'm almost surprised that there's not more.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do
Why do you think
you?
that is? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Down in South Florida. Yeah, there's always it. Well, I mean, I guess it more depends on where at. So, like, when you get around the sandbars and the different marinas, the ramps mainly. So when you're around the ramps and you're around the sandbars, you've got anchor lines at the sandbar, so people aren't familiar with it. The wind's blowing, the current's taking them, they're driving over other people's anchors, wraps around the anchor,
E-
shuts the engine off, and now they're floating into other boats. And then at the like you were talking about being close to the dock and like being on a pontoon, it's like a big sail, it just pushes you around. So when the boat ramps get congested, a lot of that happens where the biggest thing that we see is that people take the boat into like trailer or whatever, but they drift over, so they don't hit their mark. Opposed to trying to reverse out, for whatever reason, the most common thing is people try and turn around, and it's like you've gone way past the point of return here. There is no turning around, and then that's when they panic and throttle. They try to turn the boat around. Clearly, they're not going to make it, so then they panic and throttle, and then boom, they either hit somebody else's boat, slam into the dock, or like a number of any other things that you see when you're scrolling on TikTok. You see like that. They're the ones. That's the qualified captain. They're the one on Alfred's show. Like you see them. So I would think that
Yeah.
you'd see quite a bit of those up there. You know.
Well, yeah, so it's more so of that. Like, do I see like actual
Mm.
boat on boat collisions as much as do I see like one panic driver hitting like a stationary boat or dock?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's more common than like a boat on boat collision. And that's what like people don't understand when they're renting a boat or going out on the boat as beginners is like they think, okay, we just have to avoid other boats. This is the open waters. We're good. But in reality, like you said, there's hidden anchor lines. You're
Mm-hmm.
approaching boat ramps, trailering in and out. And they're all things that you need to know, like basic boating etiquette in order to avoid the actual collision.
What kind of tips would you give for someone in that? I think that would be the most common things. I would say one in a congregated area like a sandbar. Do you guys have a sandbar there, or
Yeah,
like it's more like a party
yeah.
cove or something like that?
We have both. The Party Cove is definitely very popular. It's called Byram Cove, and we have like hundreds of boats there every
Hmm.
weekend. It's crazy. And so when you get a windy day and you get the people that don't have good anchors, they don't understand the
Oh
bottom
yeah,
floor of the
yeah.
lake. Uh, yeah, you see like quite a few like close calls in there because you're packed together. Like the tie-ups could be bigger than like 40 boats long. It gets pretty
Hmm.
intense.
Yeah.
And then you
What
get
kind
the
of tips?
people, and then you get the people that like think that, oh, like let's just tie up, but like you don't know the person
Oh
and so they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
can we tie up? And you're like, what? Like, I don't think so, man.
That is too funny. Yeah, yeah, I forgot about those situations. Like, we don't have as many of those because we got bigger sandbars. So for us, it's kind of like, you just find a spot, pack
Yeah,
in,
it's like
and
a
then like
parking
if you know
spot.
people, you tie up. But um, yeah, we don't have like you guys have like you said, you got 40 boats deep, and like you don't know the
So
person.
different,
It's kind
yeah.
of
It's cool to
yeah.
see how like the boating party styles are across the different states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, 100%. What kind of tips would you give somebody to get into that scene? I guess it'd be the best way to say that. Like, like, do you just pull up and like start tying off to somebody's boat, or like?
No, you can't do that. I mean, it's a great way to meet people from a distance. Like I get a lot of people that like give me a wave and, like maybe get talking. Because what I'll do is I'll take my paddle board out and about in the cove
Mm.
and I'll like meet people that way. I would say that's probably a safer bet than like approaching with your own boat. Be like, can I tie up?
Yeah, yeah, and then accidentally hit him with your bow anchor, like your bow roller on the way in.
Oh my
Oof.
God. I know. It's a bad way to meet friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then, all right, then what about tips? And then when they're returning the boat, since that's the other issue of you know, having accidents happen and stuff.
Well, my like go-to saying that I say in probably so many of my boating tutorial videos is neutral is your friend. I actually ran
Mm-hmm.
into one of the girls that watch my videos, and we were docking our boat, and she was like, "Neutral is your friend. Steer, then gear." And she's like quoting like my favorite sayings because it's so true. Like I I don't care if you're hitting like I truly don't care. If you're a new boater and you're gonna like bump up against a dock in neutral
Mm-hmm.
is so much better than when you're throttling. Like
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and I think that you almost look like more of a controlled boater if you're coasting into a situation in neutral and you get over to the side and maybe use your little like docking pole if you need to navigate away from the
Yep.
dock, but like in a calm sense versus doing exactly what you said before and like panic throttling.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Panic and throttle's never the good.
Panic and
Good
throttle.
that's that's standard operating procedure at the boat ramp. But
Yeah, very
the
opposite from neutral is your friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because also you don't want to leave it in gear too. That's I think another common mistake that people make is they're approaching the dock, right? Or they're approaching whatever, whatever you're approaching the dock, you're approaching the ramp, you're approaching the sandbar or the beach or whatever. And you like are concentrating on the dock, right? You're like, okay, here's the piling. All right, we're floating, floating. But then you go to grab the line and then get it on the dock, but forget that you left it in gear and you're like going forward. So like um jet skis, wait, jet boats. That's like another one that people because it's if it's running, like it's propelling you forward. So they go to get the dock and then the boat keeps going and then now you got that's where you see the people fall off into the water and stuff like that. So I guess I would throw that tip in there is the on your neutral fact on the neutral, like neutral, because if you go away and it's in gear, you're moving. Hey there, sorry to take you away from the video, but real quick, did you know that on average a boat owner will spend between $1,000 and $5,000 a year just on servicing their engine? And you could actually pocket and save a lot of that money if you would just do the service yourself. It might seem like a daunting task, but I guarantee you virtually everyone can do it with our guidance and the Boaters program. This is just one skill that you could learn inside the program because we have hundreds of other videos teaching you all kinds of boating skills, as well as a weekly live stream where we have questions and answers with me, as well as a chat feature where you can send videos and pictures, ask all kinds of questions, or look for some advice or some guidance on a project that you're doing on your boat. You can join the program by hitting the first link in the description, clicking join, or visiting bornagainboating.com. Now back to the video.